Perfect. Well, thanks everybody for showing up. Just by a quick show of hands, we're a fairly small group, so we'll probably be able to have a little bit of discussion, but how many of you can define what MITRE is? Okay, good. So, we have one. Okay, perfect. So this is really good, and you know, I kind of half expected this because this, in a way, is very leading edge, despite the fact that MITRE has been around for a while. So I'm going to take a little bit of a step back. I'm the guy that told the archery story up on stage, but just to kind of give you a little bit about who I am a cybersecurity engineer. I currently work for Cato Networks. This is just a little bit of background. So I do hold a master's degree in cybersecurity. I am a CISSP. You asked about this earlier, the MITRE certifications. I do hold all of MITRE certifications, so very familiar with what it is. But really, this journey for me started back here. Does anybody know what this is up here in the middle? Is that familiar to anybody?
Is that green screen?
Yeah, it's old school CRT, but what is it? Anybody know what that is? You guys ever hear of a movie called War Games? You remember that? Okay. This was the Greetings, Professor Falcon. This is actually what pulled me into cybersecurity when I was a kid, right? So I actually saw this movie, thought it was just the coolest thing ever, and decided that that's what I wanted to do with my life. Now, you know, 5+ years at Ohio State and later, ended up with the bachelor's and then went on to continue my studies. So a lot of opportunities for certifications in this field. I've had a great time exploring some of those. This is probably my weirdest one here. So I am a certified encryption specialist. So if you want to talk about encryption and the mathematics and all that, I am sure we can record it and it'll put you to sleep at night. But what is MITRE actually? So MITRE, a little bit about them, it is an organization that was founded in 1958 as a nonprofit organization. Now most people don't realize that MITRE is actually that old, but founded back in the 50s, and their express purpose was to provide technical guidance, right? This is a picture of them doing so, providing technical guidance to the United States Air Force. That's literally why they were founded in the first place. Now, over time, they began to get involved in more and more from an aerospace perspective, and in 1959, they were the ones that devised that system for the Federal Aviation Administration and air traffic control. Now, I don't mean to scare you when I say this, but they're still using the same system today, okay? Now, it's a little bit frightening. I actually live where I reside. I live in Northeast Ohio. I'm not far from Oberlin Center, which if you recall back in the days of 9/11, they were critically involved because they monitored that airspace where the airplane turned around and then crashed in Shanksville. But they still use a lot of the old systems that MITRE came up with, including wooden slats that they move around for airplanes. In 1962, MITRE got into data acquisition, processing, computer programming, and so forth. So now you see them swinging over into kind of the IT world. And in 1971, they became a part of ARPANET. Does everybody know what ARPANET is? Yeah, I see a lot of heads nodding, right? This is the forerunner of the interwebs, so to speak, right? So they were a part of that entire project. In 1985, they registered the first ever .org. So the first ever .org ever registered was MITRE.org. And it still exists today. So you can go to MITRE.org and you can find a lot of information about the organization. In 1995, Y2K was all the buzz. And MITRE was a part of this in consulting in terms of the conversion from the old 2-digit years to the 4-digit years. And then in 1999, they developed the CVE system. Now, just another show of hands, and I should have warned you, I like to interact. How many of you know what a CVE is? Okay, 1, 2, 3. What is a CVE? Define for me. I see 5 people.
Common vulnerability exposure.
Common vulnerabilities and exploits. Okay? Common vulnerabilities and exploits. So what this system is it tracks the different vulnerabilities or potential exploits that threat actors can take advantage of in order to compromise any number of systems, CVEs. That still is, that not only does that exist today, that is really valuable in the cyberspace. In 2003, they expanded fully into cybersecurity, and that's where they have continued since that time, as well as the other endeavors that they do. And in 2013, they developed a knowledge base known as ATT&CK. Now, I actually had somebody during the networking session ask me, do you realize that you accidentally put an ampersand in ATT&CK? That wasn't an accident. That's actually how they spell it. So, what is attack? Why? That's a great question.
I see that it always throws me off a little bit, man.
Yeah,
I get it, but
yeah.
they just did it?
Here's why they do it. It stands for Adversarial Tactics, Techniques, and Common Knowledge. Okay? That's why they use the little ampersand in there, right, to make it look like that. But obviously, for those of you who may not be aware, putting an ampersand in a URL, it doesn't work. Right? You can't do that. So a lot of times you'll still see it spelled out as attack. And some of the sites that I'm going to show you at the end here where you can take advantage of some of this, you'll actually see that. But it stands for Adversarial Tactics, Techniques, and Common Knowledge. Now we need to break down some of these words that are in here because they really matter in terms of what this framework is. This is what people normally think of when you say MITRE ATT&CK Framework. Does this look familiar to anybody, this eye chart? Anybody? Okay, I got a few nods in the back of the room. So what these are, and we're going to dig into these a little bit, are what are often referred to as TTPs. Tactics, Techniques, and Procedures. Now, I will tell you that these are actually just the tactics and techniques. The procedures are elsewhere. But if you look across the top, are any of you in here familiar with the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain? God, I should have warned you guys, this is going to be a hardcore cybersecurity, right? And I'm not talking about Cato even once, right? So across the top is what can essentially map to the Lockheed Martin kill chain. What is that? The Lockheed Martin kill chain represents the typical process that a threat actor will take in order to try to compromise a system. Whether that system is your network, it's your laptop, it's your cell phones. Before everybody came in, I was doing a scan. I can see how many Apple Watches are in here and how many iPhones and how many Samsungs and this TV and so forth, right? These are the typical steps that they would take to compromise. That's what you see across the top. These are the tactics. Under each tactic, for example, privilege escalation, MITRE tracks 13 different techniques. So under privilege escalation, it might be abuse elevation control mechanism, or create and modify system processes, or process injection, or utilizing valid accounts. What's the point that I'm trying to make here? The point is that the MITRE ATT&CK Framework is not a reactive cybersecurity mechanism. The MITRE ATT&CK Framework is based upon observable, real threats that happen in the world. These are things that we see, okay? The nice thing about them, as we'll discuss, is not only are they things that we see, we can actually tie these techniques together and see what's next. And that's huge. This is behavioral analytics. And this applies across the board. So let's dig a little bit further. Tactics, techniques, and procedures. This is one of the broad tactics, which is reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is what happens very early when a threat actor is trying to compromise you. What does that mean? It means they're trying to figure out what your network looks like, what services are you running, where did you leave a door open somewhere. That is a tactic. And what I want you to notice is in the attack framework, every tactic is numbered TA and then some series of numbers after it, so that it is a common reference framework. It will talk to you about when this tactic was created and when was it last modified. It'll give you a description, and then under the tactic are the various techniques. So the techniques will start with just a T, not a TA, and then a 4-digit number. Even underneath these techniques are what are referred to as sub-techniques. So in reconnaissance, technique 1595 is active scanning of the network, and there are sub-techniques, scanning IP blocks, vulnerability scanning. Do you get the picture? Right? We're basically creating almost a tree of how threat actors act and trying to identify those with a common framework. That's tactics and techniques. And then the third is procedures. Okay, so here's the tactic they're going to use. They're going to try to do reconnaissance. Here's the technique. They're going to scan your network. And then the procedure is, how do they actually do it, and who do we see doing it? So, under procedure examples, you see an ID that says G0139. If it starts with a G, it's a group. This is a threat actor. This is a bad guy. And in this case, it says it's Team TNT, has scanned specific lists of target IP addresses. In other words, they use a predefined list and they go through and they scan those. So this is pretty good stuff, actually, right? We're actually getting intel on these groups. As well, how do you mitigate it? How do you stop them from doing that? M1056 pre-compromise is that it can't be easily mitigated with preventative control since it's based on behaviors performed outside the scope of enterprise defenses and controls. What does that mean? That means if I'm out on the interwebs and I want to scan your organization, you're not going to stop me. Okay? I can passively scan you and you won't even know it. You might know it if I do it too aggressively, but there's really no way to mitigate that. However, you'll notice there's also detections. Those start with a DS, and they will actually tell you, here are the things to watch for to see if somebody is scanning you. Okay, that's pretty cool. So what are we doing? We're identifying the tactic that the threat actor would use. What techniques do they use to execute it? What are the specific procedures that the groups use? How do I stop it from happening? And how can I detect that it's happening? This may be valuable, right? This is what exists in the MITRE ATT&CK database. And one of the ways you can think about this, how many of you know who Simon Sinek is? Anybody ever heard of Simon Sinek, the start with why guy? That you should always explain why first and then how and finish with what. That's essentially what we're talking about. The conventional way of thinking in cybersecurity, you know, I run into this too as an OEM, right? Oh, your Cato networks. What do you guys do? Of course, my temptation, the easiest answer is, well, we are a SASE company. That's what. You got to think the other way around. You got to start with why, because if you start with why, you do that remarkable thinking. If somebody comes to me and says, oh, you're with Cato Networks, what do you do? And I say, we believe that every organization needs to have access to security and that it needs to be done in a way that is simple, that's effective, and easily managed. That's a why statement. MITRE ATT&CK is the same way. The tactics are the why. The techniques are the how, and the procedures are the what. Okay? So we are really thinking that behavioral perspective. From a cyber perspective, we are thinking behavior first. Anybody ever heard of the pyramid of pain? Let me explain the pyramid of pain. This was actually proposed by David Bianco of the SANS Institute. And what it essentially says is that starting at the bottom of the pyramid are the things that are easiest for threat actors to compromise. These are easy. So, hash values. Those are really easy for a threat actor to compromise. Why? All I got to do is change one bit in my malware and the hash changes. Does that make sense? Okay. What typically uses hash values from cyber perspective? Give me an example of something that uses hash.
Encryption?
No, not really, because hash is not about encryption. Hash is about integrity.
Checksum.
Yeah, checksums are hashes. Yeah, that's correct. But what typically uses these? Passwords do use hashes. You're absolutely right. You don't actually, when you type in your password, it doesn't send your password. It sends a hash of your password. Why? Because hashes can't be reversed. You can't get a hash and reverse engineer it into the password. You're right. But from a cyber perspective, yeah, go ahead, last chance.
Doesn't every packet have a CRC on it?
It does. That's essentially a hash. Yeah. Hashes are typically used to check integrity, but what they're used for in a cyber perspective, one of the ways, is antivirus signatures. The signatures you download. When they look at viruses, I mean, can you imagine having to scan every program all the way through to determine if it's a virus? No. What they do, Kaspersky and McAfee and all these organizations, is they take the malware, they compute the hash of it, and that's what goes into the database. And so when it's scanning your laptop, for example, it's scanning all the files, all it's doing is calculating the hash and then comparing it with their table. That's why it's fast, arguably, right? But that's very easy to defeat because if I'm writing malware, all I got to do is change the comment in the malware, recompile, and now the hash has changed. Now your engine can't find me. Really easy to get. Trivial. And then as we actually move up, all the way up toward the surface, we get starting toward network and host artifacts, right? Looking at things that are left behind or footprints. That starts getting annoying to the threat actor. Particular tools that exist, that's downright challenging. But if you are looking at things from a TTP perspective, that is really tough. In other words, behaviors. That is very hard to defeat. Why? Because these threat actors spend a lot of time developing their techniques that they use to compromise you. That means it takes a long time to change it too. It's annoying as all get out. So this really is, from a cyber perspective, where we want to be. Okay? If you are looking for a cybersecurity solution, as close as I get to an ad, they better understand this. They better understand this. Okay? So, what can we do with this? I've told you what it is. Now, how about a so what? Okay, Bill, so what? Sounds great. What are we going to do with this? Well, first of all, the MITRE ATT&CK Framework is excellent for cyber threat intelligence. You see, we have the ability to go out there and collect all the data that they have on all the various groups that try to attack. This is just a few of them. So, for example, admin@338, that's the name of a group. It says it's a China-based cyber threat group that previously used newsworthy events as lures to deliver malware and has primarily targeted organizations in financial, economic, and trade policy. Okay, stop. Right there, if I'm a financial organization, right, if I'm Fifth Third Bank, these guys are interesting to me. They're very interesting to me, okay? Same kind of thing down here. It's talking about this operating out of Iran. Okay, well, there's an opportunity to do geofencing. Website defacement. Do I have a public-facing website? Most people do, right? That's something to take a look at. Down here, electric utility sector within the United States and United Kingdom. If I'm a utility like First Energy, I want to know about these guys. You get the point, right? We collect all of that data in the MITRE ATT&CK Framework so that you can do your analysis on the potential cyber threats that are going to impact your organization. And I'll show you how you can do something very specific with that. So here is where I dug into admin 338, and you can see that as soon as I dig in, what does it do? It starts telling me the techniques that they use. Okay? Now, do you remember that chart that I showed you in the beginning? Looked like all those boxes and so forth. There's some things that we can actually do with that based on this information that's provided in these groups. So there's a little button here that is going to allow me to download all of those techniques in a JSON format and literally put it on that map. Now, why does it matter that they color the boxes in on that map? Because now you can look at things like your event logs, your SIMs, what firewalls do you have, are you using SASE, and see if they match up with each other. And that's how you determine if your protection is up to snuff. Okay? So threat intelligence. We can also do adversary emulation. So here we go again. Tell me, what is a red team? What is a red team? Anybody know?
Red team tries to get into your infrastructure or network, tries to compromise it, see if they can get in.
So they're the bad guys?
They're simulating bad guys.
Okay. They're emulating adversaries. Yeah, 100%. Some organizations, and if you're not familiar with them, it's my sincere hope that your organization does get familiar with them. And a lot of times these folks are hired, right? These are folks that are hired to pretend like they're bad guys and to try to hack into your system. They're the white hat hackers, okay? That's the red team. This really comes down to a discussion about offensive security versus defensive security. Now, you're not allowed to answer anymore because you have a lot of these answers. But can anybody tell me the difference between offensive security and defensive security in your environment? I should have warned you, this class is intermediate to tough, right? Defensive security is what we traditionally think of. I got my firewalls, I got my unified threat manager, I've got all my antivirus deployed, I've got my endpoint, I've got all these different pieces. That's defensive security. Offensive security says, I don't care what you have. I am going to think like a hacker, think like an attacker, and I'm going to poke holes, and then we're going to determine what tools we need. Does that make sense? Right? You're being offensive. You're thinking like a hacker when you build your organization's defenses. So, for example, in Team TNT, We're actually seeing, who the contributors were, when was it last updated, and what are all the techniques that are used. An offensive security person, a red team person, is able to take these techniques and literally walk them through just like they are the threat actor. That's pretty cool, right? So if you're in financial, you pull up that team, you look at all the techniques that they use, and then you try to do them in your environment and see if your SOC detects them. Oh, that's big. That's offensive security. And see, here's that eye chart again. We can actually map the techniques and follow the flow. See the arrows? You can actually map it and see how they behave inside of your environment, and then you emulate that. You follow those same steps. You literally emulate the behavior of the hacker in the environment. That's adversary emulation. And the procedures, they literally will step you all the way through. In fact, in some cases, you'll see IDs that begin with an S. It'll actually tell you the software that they use, like the Metasploit framework, right? Like AirCrack. Any of those hacker tools. Anybody familiar with Kali Linux? Yeah, just a couple folks. So it's a free Linux distribution called Kali. Go to kali.org, and it has all the tools that are typically used by hackers and script kiddies.
I thought it was Cali, but apparently not.
Kali. You say tomato, I say tomato. All right? And not only does it give the software, but it'll give you the names of the different groups, like APT-18. Do you know what an APT is? Oh, see, I'm going to stop asking. Advanced Persistent Threat. You nailed it. Perfect. Those are the folks that are real nasties. Right? And you can even see, look, there's Windows registry information. It's pretty cool. Again, heavily used by red teams, adversary emulation. But see, there's something that's really interesting that we observe in cybersecurity, and that's when you have red teams. And by the way, what's the opposite of a red team? The blue team. So the red team is offense, the blue team is defense. And what actually happens when you go through these exercises is it gets very adversarial. So you'll even have red teamers that'll cheat a little bit, or the blue teamers who pretend they found something but they didn't actually find. It's not incredibly effective if they feel disincentivized to miss something, right? And yeah, you are disincentivized. You're on my red team, you didn't do it, but it's a hole, you're fired, right? So there's an incentive to always be right depending on what team you're on. So MITRE ATT&CK can also be used for the concept of purple teaming. Now, what is a purple team? Anybody ever heard that term before? Okay, a couple. I'm going to lift the restriction. What is a purple team?
I believe they sit between the two groups, and they're kind of like a moderator, but I could be wrong.
Super close. That's actually a white team.
Okay.
The purple team is a combined red and blue team. Think of the colors, right? So what this is you've got threat actors doing adversary emulation, but they're also talking to the defenders at the same time. So now they go, click, 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 click. Did you see that? Oh, you didn't see it? Okay, go look at this. Ready? Click, click, click. Did you see it? Oh, I saw it. Okay, good. We got that one nailed. It's cooperative, okay? So the MITRE ATT&CK Framework, because it understands here are the functions of a red team. This is a good one to have. Remember, you're going to get the presentations on this. There are the functions of the red team. There are the functions of the blue team. We merge those together under the MITRE ATT&CK Framework, and we can do cyber threat intelligence, prepare for the exercise, actually execute it, do your lessons learned, and do it over and over again. Now, if you think it's just MITRE that espouses this, you might have heard of NIST, okay? Those folks are pretty important, right? NIST espouses purple teaming as well because it is a very effective way to increase your company's defenses. Notice I haven't talked about buying anything yet at all, much to the chagrin of Cato Networks, right? But the point here is we have to get in this mindset of teams working together, and the MITRE ATT&CK Framework will help us to do that. Let me make sure we're doing good on time. The next one is threat detection. Very simple. Threat detection enables us to be able to figure out when threats are happening. So again, you've got a detection set of information, all starting with DS. It will tell you what data source you're looking at, so processes. The component is process creation. And over here it says monitor Windows for Windows event ID 9707, or look for changes to these registry keys. They're literally giving you how to find if an attacker is coming after you. That's in here, okay? So you don't have to guess. There's no guesswork that's actually needed in this. You can also do a SOC assessment. Show of hands, anybody who has a SOC. Okay, couple, 3, yeah, good. This is kind of scary. In one of the presentations, they were talking about the fact that he said that the network team and the security team need to merge. It was our friend from Zoom. I think you got to be careful of that. Okay. First of all, in my own experience as an OEM, I see that usually these two teams are worlds apart. Okay. You almost always can talk to the network team, but the security guys are so dang paranoid, they don't want to hear it. Plus, security guys get assaulted by people selling tools. They get absolutely assaulted by it, right? And they shut you down. For a SOC assessment, the way that the MITRE ATT&CK Framework helps is that you're given the entire chart. You can then lay on, remember those groups that may attack you? You lay them on the chart. And then you lay on your current defenses on top of that. And you see where you're covered and where you're not. So in this example, they in 2021, ran a heat map, and look at all the red in here, right? This is all stuff that their potential attackers would try to hit, and it's not covered. And then you notice as you move into the next year, they've cleaned up a bunch of stuff, right? So what can you do for a SOC assessment? Not only from the perspective of what are you monitoring, but we can look at the tools that you have in place. Do you have a next generation firewall that can look at applications? Okay, well then we color in the squares that say got it, need it, got it. You know what I mean? And then you lay the threat actor on top, and then you can make those improvements. You may say, wow, we really aren't watching endpoint the way that we need to. Let's look for a solution to that. I can either home grow it, I can buy it, whatever the case, and try to make the map a little bit better. So, I told you what it was. I told you why it matters. So what? But now what? Now what do we do moving forward? I'm going to give you some resources. This is the part where it is not rude at all to take out your camera if you wish. This is 4 websites that I want to give to you to be able to utilize to bring the MITRE ATT&CK Framework into your organization. By the way, none of this costs a single penny. Remember, this is a .org. This is a not-for-profit. So the top one, attack.mitre.org, that's the whole knowledge base. That's the database where you can run searches, learn about threat actors, find techniques that they use, determine how to detect, determine how to mitigate. The second one down is the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator. It's an online web application that lets you fill out those squares. Okay? So it's literally interactive. You click it, you give it a score, you tell it what color, and you get to map the thing out, and then you can save it as a JSON or whatever. The third one, and this is, I think, one of the best resources, this one in Cybrary, is free training in the MITRE ATT&CK Framework. It's free. It doesn't cost you a penny to learn all of this stuff. And then finally, the fourth one, and this was something that somebody asked originally, this is where you can go take exams and get certified in MITRE. Now, this little picture that I have on here, this is the roadmap to certification in MITRE. It's 19 freaking classes with 19 freaking examinations. It is not easy, but it is worth it. Now, that is the only piece that costs. If you're going to go through MITRE Ingenuity and you want the certifications, you will pay a fee for a 1-year subscription. So they give you a year to get through the 19 classes and the 19 final exams. And I'll tell you a little secret. This is a secret from your Uncle Bill. When you take those exams, make sure you're ready. Because if you fail, and by the way, fail is anything below 80%. If you fail, they lock it on you for 24 hours. So you can't go take it, fail, and then do it again. And also, not that I tried, but I tried. I tried recording the questions because I had a heck of a time with one of them on cyber threat intelligence. And then I went back in 24 hours, and the questions were different. Those bums, right? They did a great job with it, right? They really want to make sure that you understand it. So this is not easy. This is not an easy accomplishment. But what they will do, you can see there's actually 5 different rows. There's the Cyber Threat Intelligence Certification, Security Operations Center Certification, an Adversary Emulation Certification, a Threat Hunting Certification, ooh, that's a good one, and a Purple Teaming Certification. In fact, all of those sections that I just went through, that's the opportunity you have to pull in those certifications. And I promise you, I'll get to you, I promise. I promise you that if you go through this, it is going to change the way you think about cybersecurity. And regardless what vendors you choose, or if you have a separate networking and security team, or you have a SOC or you don't, you're going to get much more intelligent about it. You're going to be able to look at the organization with a new eye and begin to identify where this makes sense. And for those of you in this room who are our partners, right, that we love to work with at Cato Networks, this is beautiful for us. And the reason it's beautiful for us is because we know that you're going to come in, this is almost a commercial, I'm so close, right? You're not going to come in saying, would you like a firewall and some SD-WAN? You're going to stop that nonsense because, quite frankly, customers are tired of it. They're tired of it. They can go on LinkedIn and get advertised to all day. But when you can come in and you can say, have you done an assessment of your SOC? Do you know what your heat map looks like? Do you understand where your opportunities are to bolster your framework? That's an entirely different conversation. And when you can say the solution that we bring to the table addresses adversary emulation, it addresses, because this is a question I get. Okay, I'm still Cato Networks, right? I actually get this question. Bill, if we do Cato Networks, isn't that going to put everybody out of a job? I get asked that question. The answer is no. It's going to help you mitigate so that you can start thinking about this stuff and not putting in firewall policies. So I'll stop there. You had a question?
Do you remember the ballpark cost?
I can remember the exact cost. It is, for 1 year subscription, it is $499. So it's not too bad. Compared to a CISSP, oh my God.
$499 in order to access it and take the test, basically.
Correct.
Once you get the badges or you batch.
Okay, so I love, yeah, so I love what they do. They don't expire, but what they do is they'll add new certificates. So you may have the purple teaming badge. It won't expire, but they'll send you a notification that says, hey, we got another class for you to take, right? Do it. You have the subscription. This isn't about how many colors can you put on the screen. It's about getting smarter, right? About understanding behavioral basis of threats.
What about someone who doesn't have their CISSP? Would you recommend this over the CISSP?
No. So in this particular case, I love this from the defender's standpoint, right? CISSP is kind of if I ever have to take that test again, I'm going to die, right? Because you got to think weird to pass that. How many CISSPs in here? Any CI? No, I can't be the only one. Okay, trust me, it's weird. So I think this would be a good first one to do. Go here first, start getting behavioral, because it's going to begin to get you thinking like a CISSP, right? Now you're thinking not only from a cyber perspective, but you're thinking an organizational perspective as well. And that is a huge advantage if you're going for your CISSP. CISSP is just ugly. Other questions? You know anybody know what the pass rate is for CISSP? 11%. 11%. It's horrible. Okay, if there's no other questions, thank you. Go ahead, Cameron. It's horrible. Yeah, absolutely. Guys, if you want to get in touch, grab that QR code. I actually do, for Cato Networks, I do cyber threat podcasts. I do dictionary definitions. So in another room, everybody was like, what's a secure web gateway? I'll give you the definition. And they even put me in an episode to talk about zero trust. So get on there and take a look. Friend me up on LinkedIn.
And if anybody wants me to send them those links, Bill ran the presentation on my computer.
There you go.
So Bill,
Yes.
malware's on my phone.
Yeah. My bad.
Mission accomplished.
My bad. That's right.
We got about 10 or 15 minutes till we get going in the main room, so feel free to stretch your legs.
Yep. We finished 3 minutes early, gents. So.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Thanks.